Greetings, friends. This is my first official video of the Daddy channel. Again, we are no longer Centaur Fragrance. We're no longer going to talk about fragrance here. Again, if you do love fragrance, I invite you to my Instagram where my name still is Centaur Fragrance.
I need to explain myself.
This video today is about what the purpose of my channel, which I've gone over a little bit before, but here it is in full detail. A lot of hard points here. A lot of information, and of course I am going to break this down here as best as possible, and of course we're going to have multiple videos about these topics with examples from current news and history and everything else. So what is this video about? You saw the title, The New Age of Men. This channel has a purpose, and I have a purpose, and this channel is going to be about helping men realize their value, their potential in life, and what they even want in life. There's so many men who go throughout life and they are told what to believe and what to think. This applies to women too. Again, a lot of women can learn a lot from this channel. A lot of it is going to apply to them and be helpful, but this is going to be framed a little bit, for the men out there. But what do you want in life? Again, you know that you're raised and you're told to live a certain way and think a certain way. Commercials, TV, movies, everything tell you how to think and how to live. But how do you actually want to live? And would that make you actually more happy? We'll talk about that. What's actually going to help you to be happy, and what do you need to do in order to be more happy? Now, one reason I started this channel is that a man who, again, has that some kind of form or of personal identity. So many men, again, identify themselves as how many conquests they've had with women. There's so many channels out there that are supposedly out there about men's issues, and do they actually help men understand who they are and how they want to live and who they want to become and what would actually make them happy? No, they really just tell them. Sometimes some of it's relevant information, but some of it's not really, and they tell them to have how to get more conquest, and they do tell them some useful stuff, like, of course, maybe you need to lose a few pounds, not if you do want to be more attractive, but also doing that for your own personal health. That could be a goal of yours, but is that something because you watched some TV show to get motivation? Do you actually want to lose the weight? Is that something you actually want to do? It needs to come from a place of your own personal wants and needs. So a lot of these channels, I don't want to name too many, and I know that you can kick up a little bit, so especially when you're a smaller channel. So I'm going to do a tiny bit of that here and just mention some people out there like Donovan Sharp. There's some men's channels out there who really are just telling you or encouraging you to really do the same old thing as they always have, but they frame it in a little bit of a way that they're telling you that they are the solution and that they are going to help you to become more confident and get the women. So their focus still is women. Donovan Sharp still, for some reason, supposedly helping men to become masculine, helping men to become confident, still has a picture of his girlfriend / somebody who lives with him in 2020, which is really laughable. And we'll talk about, and I'll have multiple videos about, the risks and the dangers and what is happening to society, why I would even think that is funny. But these kinds of people aren't here to really help you at all. And they don't seem to understand that you can be different or see beyond your own biology. They don't seem to believe that you can have an identity beyond the basic norms of food, water, shelter, possibly having kids. There are these men out there who are supposedly helping you, but they just do the same old thing that every, pickup artist has really done in the past with some relevant information about what's going on today. They're not really any different. They're just making money off of you. But let's talk about, how the or your goals and what you need to have with those goals, and I guess what's going to help you to achieve anything in life. You know, becoming a man means no longer having goals with the motivation of getting more women. That can be an aspect of masculinity, but it's not the it's not the defining thing. You should not want to become more masculine, more fit, more muscular, get the better car, have the better life, just because you want women. That is not really going to. It can lead to some happiness, but it's not really going to lead to long-term happiness. It's not going to lead you to a deeper sense of self and identity. And with the current laws, which we'll make separate videos about all of this, but with the laws and the divorce courts, there is really not much of any benefit to that. Am I telling you that every man should become a slob? Or lazy or not work? Absolutely not. But you are putting yourself in a world of hurt if you are listening to your uncle or your dad or your grandpa or somebody watching an old movie who just says go out there and find a nice girl, have a happy life, and everything is just going to work out for you, when 80% of marriages are, you know, the divorces are started by women, and I think it's like 60% or more of those of marriages into divorce, and that's of, you know, in our culture today, where the people who even decide to get married at all, who had the intentions of, you know, having a good relationship. These are people who are often religious, the type of people today who get married. Many of the times, most people don't really get married anymore. And of the people who, again, do decide to get married and often are religious and often do want to make a really happy family, and there's planning involved, and investment, and a $10,000 ring, and a wedding that can cost as much as $50,000. And then the woman, in the end, does a divorce and gets all the payouts and all these benefits paid by you, you know, and also, of course, the government and the lawyers are benefiting from all of this. So we'll definitely be talking all about that. So you men out there need to be able to control your biology, your base desires, and you know, being able to control yourself and understand who you are and what you want will definitely lead you to avoid many of the pitfalls and the dangers that so many other men out there have. You know, so many people who are even famous, like John Likas, who got married, I believe it was 4, even 5 times. And he even was able to dodge some of those dangers. Again, we'll make some separate videos about that as well. But, you know, he was a man who was very aware, very desirable to women, and, you know, very famous and everything, and still had all of these problems. So, you know, it doesn't matter how famous you are. Even the owner of Amazon got divorced. Who do you think you are? We'll make a video about that. I keep saying that, but who do you think you are if the most famous, attractive, influential men in the world, even a billionaire, you know, can't keep on, or a woman still isn't satisfied? Who do you think you are? So, again, you need to understand who women are, what women want, our culture of today, our laws of today. Again, this channel, I guess you could say it's red-pilled content. That's not really the purpose of it, but you do need to become awake, and you do need to become aware, and we'll decide if, or we'll talk about my channel if it's actually about going, you know, men kind of leaving society. Is that what this channel is? No, it's not. I'll give you a little bit of a hint, but we'll talk about that later in this video a little bit today. So, you know, again, you men, you do have so much potential, and becoming fit can become a part of it. I do think that mastering yourself, learning a talent, becoming skilled in some way with your hands, whether it become, you know, learning how to do, you know, a musical instrument or a trade, repairing a vehicle or whatever it be, there is some satisfaction. But again, you don't have to do any of those things. There's so much stuff on the internet. You can become a designer, create the next big program, the next big software, learn coding, and so many other things that you can do with technology. There is so much out there. It's unbelievable, the opportunity you have in front of you. But so many of you men think that you have to work at a corporate business like Taco Bell, and maybe that's where you want to be. Maybe that's where you feel comfortable. Maybe you know aren't going to decide to become something more. Maybe you don't want to be. Hey, if it's your life. But there's, society could improve, and the West, with technology, the world has been improved dramatically because of technology. No matter what people say, our focus on innovation, making people's lives better and easier, is important, and we can't and we shouldn't lose sight of the advancements that we have come from electricity to all sorts of different inventions. But let's talk about men. Again, we're talking about men here. Again, there's a lot of you men have been distracted by the pickup artist type people out there trying to teach you how to get a great body, get the girl, have the nice car. Again, that sounds very enticing. It sounds like something you've been told to do, something that would be fun to do, but it's not really going to bring you long-term happiness. Let's talk about what the purpose of this channel and how you're going to actually become happy. So the purpose of this channel, again, is to help people, not just men. Again, women. A lot of this stuff is going to apply to women as well. To look beyond your own biology. I want you to become happy. And, it's really hard for people to look beyond those primitive desires. It really is. And that was my second point. That has such a strong power. And schools teach you to go out there and, have fun as a teenager. And people, these days, as young as 12, 13, 14, are out there having full blown on relationships. And, even when I was when I grew up 10, 20 years ago, there were shows like Teenage Mom and Juno and all of these things in society. And if you do go down that route, which a lot of people will, and it's just, you could argue somewhat natural, it's going to really kind of set your life on more of a path where you are looking for your next fix, like almost like a drug. You're looking for the next girl. You're looking for the next opportunity, and that is maybe the most important thing in your life because it brings you maybe the most pleasure in your life, and you don't see beyond, what life could be, maybe even beyond the physical. I've worked at places where men got very angry with me because I was an intern, and I didn't have to. I still did physical work as an intern. I shouldn't have. I should have put my foot down. But they didn't understand that I, or even other people, didn't have to do physical work as much as other people. And they thought that all work had to be physical. And with technology, we're about to move more into a world where almost everything, and we could do it today. Some billionaires have talked about it, that we could get rid of almost 80% of all hospitality and service-related jobs, your cashiers, your repair people, almost everybody that you would interact with for a basic job. Everything, almost everything outside of the internet could be fairly simply, done by a robot or software or program. And, once we eventually get into that world, it's going to change. It's going to be difficult for people to adjust. And I want you to be able to adjust and be ready for that as we change, with society or as a society. So, have something in life that you think is higher value than that biology. Again, I'm sounding like a scientist, or that you have to become an engineer of robots or something. No, but find something, that you value. There's so many even small niches. You don't even have to make the most money, where you create some form of art, some form of creativity, connect to, everything from somebody's culture, or express your culture and your history, and there's people selling things on Etsy and making a pretty good living on, and there's all kinds of things you can do out there. So, but it is starting to become harder to live. So we are going to talk about how to become successful. Again, money isn't the most important thing, but I do want to have some direction on this channel about money, because, you know, money is an issue, and things are becoming more expensive. Again, as technology rolls down, Forbes said you'll own nothing and be happy about it, that you will own no property and no possessions, and you'll be happy. Maybe that's when we're actually in the Matrix, plugged up to a computer. I don't know when they want that to happen or if that will happen. But what we know now is through studies that happened about a decade ago, they said that you had to have about 55,000 to have all of your needs met, that you were very satisfied. Having more than that would have have less and less of, bringing you any amount of potential happiness. So, if you, back then it was 55. So if you had 100,000, it wasn't going to make you much happier. And you think that $1 million might make you extremely happy, and there are opportunities. There's no doubt that it would bring you more happiness than 50,000. But would it bring you dramatically that much more? You'd be surprised that it wouldn't. And that's because the average American is making, or I guess the poverty line is below 20,000, if depending on your opinion, and the average salary is about 30. Today, as things become more and more expensive, I think that you're going to have about 75,000 to have all of your possible needs and wants met, to have everything you could potentially want and still be fairly comfortable. You could still have your a luxury good here and there, the fancy shoes, maybe a fancy watch, fairly nice clothes, a fairly good lifestyle. Probably afford a decent house, not the biggest, but not the best, but a decent, comfortable house, and with 75,000 a year. Now, if you're living in California, oh, I know it's much more expensive, but we're just talking about in general here, in generalities. Anyways, and some people in the world, 75,000, you could live like a king. It really depends on where you live and what the economy is like. So, anyways, I guess if you put that into perspective, if you were to making about double, the average or base level, I guess the minimum to not be in poverty based on where you live, about double that, that's kind of where you want to be in general. I guess that's a good way to look at it. So again, having a small company, having that little side hustle, I think is very important. I'm not even there yet. I'm still working on my little side hustles and, trying to work on a better future. I would like that, some people have complained that everybody focuses on side hustles. I would like that we all worked, in an industry and focused on building something, building big cities. And there are people who work together, like construction crews and the like. But we were really past that point of industrialization, and at least in the West, especially in America, almost all of our factories, almost all of our production has been shipped out of the country. So that's not even feasible. I actually would have liked to work in a factory. I probably would have been a happy guy working for Mr. Carnegie, making that steel that built the world. So, and they were paid very well for that work. It was hard work, but they were paid very well for it. But let's jump into the next topic. This channel is not here to promote the HOPE strategy. Now, what do I mean by the HOPE strategy? Now, your whole entire life, you've been told to go on the date and hope that you get married. Get married. Hope that you don't get divorced. Go to college. Hope that you get the job. Again, you do have to take risk, and I guess you could say risk is somewhat connected to hope, but you have to understand what the actual risks are and what's worth taking the risk for. What are the benefits of taking that risk or having some of that hope? And people promote this hope ideology, this hope belief to everybody. And you're supposed to not question it, and you're supposed to be very comfortable with the idea that you could risk everything as a man getting married to risk everything and just hope that it works out. And if it doesn't work out, oh well. I worked along somebody like this. He was still about 25, 26, had been married and divorced pretty quickly, about a 1 or 2 year marriage, had a young, a little daughter who was just like 1 year old, and was heartbroken. And even at work, we went to work somewhere, and it was funny. I think we met an uncle of his or a relative, and we were doing the work, but he brought up it real quick, and they were trying to catch up real quick because they hadn't seen each other in a while. And he said, like, the uncle said, at least you essentially got something, like, at least you got married, because not everybody can get married, or at least you had a daughter, as if, I guess biologically speaking, I guess you have your DNA out there, but it's a daughter, which also, if you're focused on the DNA aspect, and this will make a lot of people really unhappy, but if you're focused on DNA, a daughter doesn't get that DNA out as much as, a man would, but, a boy would of yours. But anyways, it actually shocked me that he was looking for comfort and for support and for a family member to give him some advice. And he was just kind of like tossed aside and said, like, you should be happy, and like, that the woman couldn't do anything wrong. And he wasn't even trying to focus on what she had done wrong, but, just be happy with whatever you get and whatever you can get, was the attitude. And in regards to a divorce that shattered him both emotionally and financially. That's the kind of world we live in today. You as a man are expected to live both traditionally in this modern world where women are no longer traditional. And if anything bad does happen to you, you're not even supposed to bring it up. And if you do bring it up, people are going to tell you that you were lucky that you even were able to have like one kid in this society, which it's extremely strange. It's extremely wrong that men are treated as, disposable, extremely disposable. You shouldn't even have a thought for yourself, men. You shouldn't even have a concern. So, again, I want you to be able to succeed. I want you to have your needs met. I want you to have less stress in that regards of money. But also, you could get rid of a lot of stress if you weren't thinking about how to impress women all the time and how to date, and if you weren't spinning all of these plates, which some men out there suggest that you should be spinning all these plates all the time. They want you to focus on quantity over quality, or just figure out what can work for you. So, again, we talked about women no longer being traditional. I saw somebody, again, it was Donovan Sharp and some of these people, and they said that women want commitment. I thought it was hilarious. These people out there are still in denial that women have changed. People can change. At the core, I guess you could say in a biological sense, do women want comfort? Yes. Women do want comfort. They do want a roof over their head. Like anybody. And they want, as they say, to make the bird's nest. They want a place where they feel secure. Of course, they want food. They want all those things, just like anybody would. But they equate that to commitment. Women no longer need commitment because they get armed protection. They get, the person protecting them from the bad men, from the police. They get subsidized everything, healthcare, food, support, and other benefits from the government. They can have fun with as many or what kind of men as they want here and there. And they can have their own jobs and the careers. There's no point at which they would possibly be really dependent on anybody where they would want to make themselves have a commitment to gain some stability for, essentially to compromise something. Because commitment, it means, can mean, or really does mean a form of compromise on two ends, at least if you have a fair commitment or a negotiation. Yes, I do know that negotiations can be very one-sided, but in regards to commitment, women don't need no longer need to compromise. And it was like 20 years ago that that they would say that a fish doesn't need a bicycle, and that they had examples like this to say that they no longer need men, and they openly celebrate and say that they no longer need men. So how and it's strange to me that they would say something like this. So that's a change in society, and men need to be aware of it. For some reason, women have been very open and very proud and very forward with some of these beliefs and change in attitude and lifestyle and character. And men are still no longer are. I mean, I guess they're not being aware of it or applying it to themselves and the culture, and they're told not to. So, anyways, let me jump to the other topic, or the rest of the topic. I wanted to say, in all respect, that we talked about some women not wanting commitment. Some women might want a commitment if they're less attractive, or if they're in a particularly bad situation, or there could be other factors. Share those expenses from a man paying for the house and the electricity and the water and all those things. But most women don't think this way. Most women don't want to be married, even when they could get a $10,000 diamond ring and a $50,000 wedding from some of these guys out there or more. They see it as bondage. And if you've never seen this before, you really need to go on the internet and open up your eyes, because we live in a whole different world. There's many women who think that marriage was or is one of the greatest forms of oppression that ever was, and still are trying to stop women from getting married today. They're and they declare all marriage as oppression. So, and that's not even, and these are fairly normal looking, acting women. The stereotype used to be about blue-haired women. Most of these women are not out here wearing blue hair or anything like that, or armpits or whatever that was about. But, they even equate marriage as to slavery. So many of these women, that's how far that they'll say that marriage was or is today. Women often are, for example, are even disgusted at the mention of dishes. Again, I am not trying to say that women should always be in the kitchen or something like that, but women, have made it a point to not cook even for themselves, and cooking for a man is completely out of the question for most women these days. And the idea of you suggesting a traditional relationship, again, if you weren't, not being disrespectful, but were wanting a traditional relationship, to them symbolizes the most evil things in the world: a domination from men, the patriarchy, and can even trigger them. They've been triggered by even the mention of dishes. But the point that I'm trying to make here is, how should I say this? A man, you were told to seek for love and commitment. Women really don't want the love and commitment. There are some out there. And as women get older, some people say they become more mature. Some people say they realize what they want. Or, we'll certainly talk about attraction and how that works with women's and men's looks and the differences between the two. But, women aren't really looking for that love and commitment in society. This is the reality. It needs to be told plain and simple and true like this. Fathers need to sit down. That's why I'm here. The Daddy Channel need to sit down their sons, because I don't know if it's biological. It was for me. And especially with the movies and the music that's still out there. And a lot of men are raised to believe that, you're still told to look out there for love. Look for the one. Look for a soulmate. Even today, look for a twin flame, and all kinds of different ways to say it. But you were told to look for one special person and to commit to that one special person. And you might say that there's no men like that out there. but most men are told that, and believed that, or at least wanted that at some point. But they've changed because women want the bad boys, and if you look on the internet, every indication, almost every woman says that they want the bad boys. And again, sometimes you can find a woman who's a little older, maybe a little bit less attractive, and they'll really disagree with these things. But go out there today. Ask the 18-year-olds, ask the 19, the 20-year-olds, ask them who they're dating. They're dating the bad boys. They're dating the rich men, and they're not really looking for love or commitment or anything like that. So, and we'll talk about the age disparity. That's a very controversial topic, but we'll make a video about that as well. But, due to our culture and our changes, women in general, they just don't want marriage. Like I've said before, they generally don't want children. Some of them do, and they'll take advantage of the divorce courts when they do. And a man just has those expectations, and they're expected to hand over everything to women. So again, I want men to be able to avoid those dangers and be treated fairly and be treated justly by the government and, how our culture is. Is it just that a man should lose half of everything he owns and the entire house and the dog and the kids to a woman who, and this even happens even if she wasn't a stay-at-home mom. But if she was a stay-at-home mom, I mean, she gets anything and everything, essentially from the man. And if they're married for 10 years, there's alimony. We'll get into all these ways and break down the finances. You'd be amazed at how much men are paying out there for women. But where a woman can, we live in a society where women can choose to get married essentially at any age. 30 is the new 20. You're as a man, you're expected to, not to want to date or marry anybody younger than 30, especially under 25. If you're a little bit older, I'm not talking about 20 years, maybe 5-10 years older, looking at somebody who's 25 or younger, many people in society will think that there's something very wrong with you, even though biologically speaking, women start to lose their looks and their fertility after 25. That's really their best years are already gone. And people expect you to, not to want to date younger than 25 when 25 is really the last year or their best year. It's really shocking that we are rejecting anything on a biological level. So again, but women can choose at any age when they want to get married to anybody who they want to. Cougars are even highly supported in our society. It's thought it's cool, and it's even becoming more popular for cougars just getting younger men in general, but even going for really young men. That is becoming somewhat socially acceptable. And there's quite a few jokes out there about that. But if a man was to even say anything remotely like that, there's cops and organizations and agencies who look even for the slightest mention of something like that. So again, a woman can judge and pick a man based on his age, his class, what car he drives, his peers, what kind of who's around him, his family, his race, his intelligence, and many other factors. She can judge him in any possible way. But men are not supposed to do this. So do I want men to start judging women on their wealth or their race or their societal status, or even on their age particularly? Maybe age-wise if you particularly want a family, but no, I mean, I don't want men to do that, but they do need to be willing to have some form of control and at least know what they want and their preferences, and understand where the woman's coming from so they don't just get used. The women are all looking for the most intelligent, the most desirable, the man who's the most famous, the most connected, the most affluent, again, of course, the best looking, who has the nicest and the best of things. And they themselves, you know, aren't looking or distinguishing what would actually make them, even them, happy. In particular, they're really focusing on, you know, those basic biological drives, and they're taught by Hollywood to kind of do this. And the Hollywood movies, we'll talk about movies and social and culture, but it would be much better. And men necessarily can't change the women, but the only control that they have, just like the women, is over who they date and who they interact with and what they do. But again, women have been told to have all the control, be as picky as possible, exclusionary as possible, and often they all want the best of the best, and they all compete over very few men. It's often said it's the 10-90 rule. It's almost the 5-95 rule. And men are taught to accept anyone or any person or any girl if she how dare you even reject or try to negotiate what kind of relationship you want, as a man. How can you have any type of standards or any type of requirements as a guy? It's very shocking when we live in a culture like that. At college, I had an experience like that where a girl really wanted to go out on a date with me. I didn't really want to, but I said, hey, why not? Let's give it a chance. And I went out on a date. I did not like her personality. I did not. I wasn't particularly attracted to her. She was decent looking, but not particularly attracted. And I'm not the pickiest, but I really am not really that picky. And I told her I might call her again. I didn't say I would. And it had been like a week or two. I didn't wait a month, and it wasn't intentional. And she sent me a message about like how could I stand her up and all this stuff, essentially shaming me and trying to tell me that I had done something wrong, and I didn't respond to it. And there was people who were trying to set me up before this. I had met her authentically. Maybe she probably had targeted me and put herself around me in my social circle so she would even be around me. But then as gossip flows, I was demonized and ostracized even more because, I was seen as a player or seen as a very bad individual because I did not keep dating or marry, somebody, again, who they didn't know anything about what I liked or what I wanted or my personality, probably didn't understand her much either. But socially, a man is not supposed to reject a woman. That is very shocking, and it needs to get. We need, again, I don't want women to be hurt, but it's gonna have. If we're gonna have men and women who are compatible dating each other, people who need to reject people who are not compatible with them. We all have different cultures, different beliefs, different lifestyles, and there's been times where people have tried to flirt with me who, more attractive than I am, at least in my opinion, and I have not tried to date them because I could tell there was a different lifestyle that they had, and I didn't want anything to do with their lifestyle or their personality. Again, most men would say, take what you can get, go for it, take anything, and have multiple plates spinning and date multiple people. And that has led us to this kind of culture now where women feel like they can have any guy anytime, and a lot of the times they certainly can date anyone anytime anywhere, but the women really can't get the commitment or the marriage from any guy anytime anywhere. So it's quite an interesting thing. I want both men and women to have a fair chance in relationships, and that requires, as unpopular as this is going to sound, men to become more picky. Men, are told in society that they always go after the blondes, or they always go after the biggest chest. And, you know, certainly that is popular with lots of men. But in general, men are far less picky. There's been studies on social dating sites where men, you know, swipe right, swipe yes on as much 70 as much as 80% of women that they would like to go out on a date with them, and you know, would you know, as they say, hit it and quit it and have some fun. But women only swipe up as much as generously 20%. A lot of them 10%, if you know, sometimes even less. It's sometimes like 5% of men get all the swipes and the likes. And we won't get into a discussion on blaming dating apps if they're the problem or not here. It's certainly, that is certainly another interesting topic, but the power of choice is a powerful thing. You know, dating is much like is an economy. There's supply and demand, and men are not demanding, you know, of what would really make them happy and what they want. So all the choice and the power is really in the women's hands. And again, that is not something that's popular to say these days. And it's true, though. If you look at any attractive or even average woman who's a 5 or a 6, there's they can date or reject almost anyone. I've seen women who are actually average on the news, and they rejected multi-millionaire sports players, and they were average or a little bit above average at best. And they were proud, and they celebrated it on the news that they did this. That's the kind of world we live in today. Again, I don't want to be too heavy, but this is a big outline of multiple issues and topics that you as men need to be thinking about. You need to be very aware of these topics. You need to investigate these topics for yourself. You need to look into the things that I mentioned. Find the news articles. I will mention them and have other videos about these kinds of things, and include the articles if I can. But this is a lot of food for thought, and I know it's hot and heavy, and there's a lot here, but let's continue. So again, women can choose what they want, but men often are not really given that choice. It is expected that men still approach women, act like the peacock, make themselves the best man possible, so women can choose from them. They're waiting at, as they say, at the end of the race, the line. They've won the race. They've become a great man, and often the race is becoming a successful man. So women wait at the end of the competition, at the end of the race, and then they pick the best of the best of what they want. And men are supposed to accept whoever's there or whatever is there, instead of rejecting. If you're not very aware, people like Leonardo DiCaprio are demonized and treated as the worst. Should you switch out your girlfriend if she gets older than 25? Maybe not. That is treating women as quite expendable. You could say objectifying them, yes. But should you do that? We'll have a video about that. But that's an extreme example. But it does bring up something that the very few men who would do something like that, or can do something like that, are, treated very badly and treated as the worst men in society. And if women do that, especially when they're younger, especially when the very attractive ones, going on luxury cruises, having all expense paid for, flying around the world, eating at having the best food in the world, given the best cars, given rings that are worth more than $10,000, and jewelry and everything else, are these types of women criticized in any possible way? Absolutely not. The only way that men are going to get a fair chance, again, in relationships, is the power of choice. So let's see here. Okay, so I want to make it very clear. I do not want women to be mistreated. A lot of people are going to come to the worst possible assumption and conclusion from me speaking men in general speaking about anything that might possibly benefit them. But of course, women can speak about anything about, things that would benefit them, and they must be celebrated and must be supported under any conditions. So again, I don't want women to be mistreated in any way. I want things to be fair. I want men to understand what women want. And if men understood what women want, men can make women happier, and women might have to actually negotiate a little bit in society. And then men might be a little bit happier. Having the second age feminists, essentially, a lot of them did want to completely walk away, and a lot of them did, and also they went after your young daughters, some of them as well, which is all fine and dandy. But institutionally, them being college professors, that's another discussion we'll have, but that's not okay. But what the thing is that, I mean, I'm focusing a lot about culture and institutions. This is really on a person by person basis. The culture, the society, and the people at large are determined by multiple individuals, the multitude, the masses. And you might seem like an outcast. Your family might not like it that you are particular. You might seem like you're very particular, that you're maybe a bad bachelor or a bad actor. Maybe you're going to seem that you're just, you do hookup culture just like any of the other women do, even if you don't, even if you are, looking for that relationship, looking for that unicorn, or looking for that special person and hoping that maybe there is one out there. You will be, it will be assumed that, especially as a man, that you're of the worst character, and you are guilty until proven innocent, when you should be innocent until proven guilty, right? But again, I'm not trying to say all men are good and all women are bad. This is a real discussion about what is going on in society, and what is needed. Now, my channel is not necessarily going to be heavily supporting traditional families and traditional values. There is some value in that. Certainly that has been something that has worked and people do like, but for some reason, especially with certain Christian groups or certain people, they seem to think that all throughout history everybody had traditional marriages with one man and one woman, when that was only the case in maybe the last 3, maybe 400 years. Societies really fluctuated, and that would be a whole huge discussion. You probably have never thought about that, never discussed that. But as far as world history goes, in the last 300, maybe 400 years, that was where there was monogamy, one man, one woman, was set as the norm, set as what was desirable, and that's what everybody chose to live by. Now, does that help build up society? Yes. That does make things much more stable, much more consistent. Whether that makes people the most happy is debatable, but I think that is a very strong argument for children, which is and the benefits for the child, which maybe that's some of my biases out here. I'm very open to having discussions, so let me know what you think below about any of these that topic or any of these topics. But we as a society are changing. I mean, we already have very, very few marriages. More children are born out of wedlock than in actual marriages. More children are born outside of marriages. I'm not exactly sure. We won't get into the debate about abortion, but I'm not sure what the percentages are. But there's a large percent of children who are never even born or allowed to be born, and a myriad or multiple other issues relating those things. Now, women are, I'm not trying to put all the blame on women, but women have changed society, have wanted to change society, and we have women actually at large are starting to move towards more divergent or unique or possibly strange things to a lot of people. One of them is polygamy, or even harem or harem like cultures. We are moving towards that. If you actually got an honest answer, and there have been some women on the internet, they would all rather date the same guy than all settle down with a less attractive guy. They would all rather have a child with one attractive guy, especially if he's wealthy, and live together like sisters in the same household and raise each other's children, than actually date or marry somebody who could be reliable. And again, the guy that they would choose for this harem or polygamy type of culture or attitude, it's not really even based on, again, the quality of the man. It's really based on how attractive he is and how wealthy he is. So you could argue that that's a huge step back for society, that we shouldn't allow that to happen. There was a time where polygamy was illegal. That's another a huge debate for another day or discussion. But my point here is that women are the ones who have thrown in castaway marriages, traditional relationships, and it's not the men who did that. A lot of people want to blame hookup culture on men. Certainly they played their hand in it, but it was women who wanted the hookup culture, who demanded the hookup culture, who demanded for it, and celebrated it, and brought us to the culture we have today. There's no doubt about that. So as birth rates decrease, that's going to cause possible complications. Now, we're not going to get into all that with certain societal changes and all that, but it's quite interesting that that is something that's not particularly talked about very much. And it would be very interesting if more people would bring up that topic and discussion about how women actually view harems, because in the past, that was seen as a foreign thing. It was seen as disgusting and terrible, and harems or polygamy were many women would have been seen as the most degrading thing possible. But to many women these days, a marriage with a reliable, loving man with traditional expectations would be seen as the most evil thing possible. So quite the social change, isn't it? And it's very hard to accept. Many people still are going to reject or die and never accept that change has happened in society. So let's talk about men and their power to choose a little bit. Again, I don't want all women to be rejected. Some women have cried that they are rejected, or that they don't have much of a chance. It's tough. There's a lot of men out there who don't get much of a chance, who are not allowed to, or are never given any chance with any woman. And most of the time, most women are given lots of chances. They are. Unless they're not particularly attractive, or don't keep themselves very healthy. And then if they act very, very shy in our culture, it can be tough for some of them. But in general, women have a much easier time in dating, have a much easier time getting married, have many men, 10 or even 100 times as many chances for relationships and marriages than men ever do. Again, there's been studies about this. I mean, you if you haven't looked into this, you wouldn't believe, unless it was done by a study, how many messages that women get on their Instagram or on Tinder or other sites. Some of them aren't even dating sites. Again, like Instagram, you wouldn't even believe how many messages that they get, and they can pick whoever they want, wherever they want, and get what kind of almost any lifestyle that they want, almost any kind of man that they could want. So, again, I'm not trying to beat up on women, but we live in a attention-based economy. Women, with this attention-based economy, It's all about who, who sees who and who's the most desirable. A lot of the times it's not even, I don't want to act like all women want money or want all the money or have to always go for the richest man. Sometimes popularity can be more valuable than money to a woman. And if you are extremely popular as a guy, you'd be amazed at what that can do for you. And women, that does get more eyeballs on you and can make you more attractive. But, men in general would, there are men out there who maybe would like a really popular Instagram model, but the majority of men don't want to always have that stress of always competing, always knowing that the woman he's dating or married to has 100 men who are maybe almost as good as you, possibly better than you, and you don't know at any moment that whenever she gets bored or mad or angry or annoyed, that she can simply replace you easily and very quickly. That's the kind of society that we're in. Now, have men done this, or can some particularly attractive and particularly successful men do this? Yes, but a man has to earn that. A man it has to be out of 1 out of 1,000 or 1 out of 10,000. Has to have applied himself, became either very smart, worked out, became very physically attractive, and also there's a lot of limiting factors like genetics. Often men don't care that much about like cheekbones or jaw lines, or height or foot size or whatever the factor might be. But women often are now choosing just off height that they won't date anybody unless they're 6 foot or taller or 6'2" or taller. And sometimes these women are 5 foot or 5'2", or sometimes I've seen cases like that where women are, shorter than average. They're not even average height, and they are desiring the top 10 percentile, some of the tallest men in the entire world. It's very strange, but that is the culture, and that is the scene the most. So we essentially have biology gone wild, where we're almost gone backwards, I guess you could argue, almost to the caveman, where a woman would want the biggest and strongest, but it's, they only go for the biggest and strongest if he somehow becomes particularly popular. There's very tall men out there, very, very tall, and also very successful men out there who never get popular and are never particularly desirable because of other factors. So it's not just biology, but so what I'm saying is that women are even pickier than beyond the biggest, wanting the most or the best out of biology. And why does that even matter? What am I trying to get at? That women have, what women actually want is, essentially the attention or the validation that they could get from the best man out there. It's not necessary. These, again, a lot of women have so many men out there, especially if they decide to be on OnlyFans or Instagram or become particularly famous or have a particularly good job. They have all their needs met. They don't need they don't need a man for safety. They do not need a man for much of anything, but possibly besides, making other women jealous, having a particularly popular man. So if you do become popular as a man, it often snowballs for you, and you often become more popular than you can imagine. I can only imagine how many women these popular men have available to them. I can only imagine it. They have more women available to them than they can imagine, and they can be extremely picky, but often these very popular men do date down. And that is one of the things that brings us to our problems of these days, is because these women have been able, sometimes even average-looking women, of average social status, of average wealth, sometimes do get a little taste and do a little experience of the best. And that is happening with social media and Instagram, and how people can reach out there and contact people, and how our society is these days. So that woman now moves her expectations and believes that she could not only marry, but easily and comfortable, or has that expectation that she can have that man today, tomorrow. She might be 20 years old now, or 25. She thinks that she can, or should be able to get that man when she's 30 or 35, when her looks have changed. And as men age, they generally put more and more work into becoming successful. Again, it's not because of some pay gap. The men do work harder. They do become more creative, put themselves at greater risk, work the longer hours, and they put them, while the women were playing around when they were 20, going on those cruises, are playing around. The most successful men, once they hit about 30 or 35 or so, really start to create their own businesses, move up the corporate ladder, or move up in their business, get into a leadership position, and or it's not even about position, or they just really get that skill, and they're really willing to sacrifice sleep, comfort. Again, they're willing to wait to get a kid. So a lot of guys, the women don't want them a lot of the times until they hit that 30, 35 or beyond. That's another hard thing that people don't want to accept, but it's true. And once they hit their stride, they men at that age start becoming really popular. And that's why you see the social dynamic where the 30, 35, 40, sometimes even 45-year-olds are dating the 20-somethings. Because that's where they are, and that's actually what's happened throughout society. We'll have another discussion about that at length, but another big discussion, and I'll even include some snippets in those videos I do in the future from some modern women who actually are kind of in the realm of sugar babies. If you know what that means, where they get paid for their services, but it's a little bit more of a relationship on like seeking arrangements. But the thing is, these women do want that age disparity. It's not very politically correct to say, and I am not trying to say what women should want and what women must want. I'm not saying my expectations. These are from women themselves. Women openly are saying that they would like a relationship with a not an old guy, not really old, but a mature man. They don't want to date men that are in their younger 20s or their same age. They want that difference, because there's an exchange of value. Again, a lot of people are still fixated on love. And certainly the man is expected to have that, but or have that kind of view on things. But in a relationship, there is an exchange, and women often what they bring to the table. And again, I'm not trying to say it's their only value, or we should look at women just for their bodies or looks, but often genetically and biologically speaking, it's a fact that in dating, what women bring to the table is often, the children that they can have and their attractiveness. That's very unpolitically correct to say these days, but that lots of women know it, and lots of women expect it and desire it and have fun with it. So there's this very strange dynamic where, women take full advantage of that exchange, but men are the ones who are criticized and demonized, and governments are even starting to talk and trying to make it so it's illegal to date if you're 40 or close to 40, or have children when you're close to 40, for men, and they're also even suggesting enforced vasectomies, which is extreme and highly illegal and would be, a very forceful thing. That is the kind of thing that we're going towards as they try to get women to have, all of these experimental things where, women who are getting into their mid-30s or mid-30s, where it's very difficult for them to conceive. The governments highly support and highly fund and encourage women, often producing, less than healthy children, or at great expense, making it where it's extremely expensive to have a child in their later years, reproductive years. So what's the point of this topic? What's the point of me addressing this? We, not only need to acknowledge, genetics, biology, which is very hard for a lot of people, that people don't want to, or some very vocal people don't want to acknowledge. And I'm not trying to be rude here. I'm not trying to hurt anybody. I don't want to hurt anybody. For some reason, this is hurtful to some people. Let me know why in the comment section below. But, men need to be willing, or at least have the option, to bring what they have to the table and have those expectations again, or whatever expectations that they would like. Again, do we need to move to a polygamous society? Looks like it's going that way. It looks like a lot of women want it that way. But we need to, as again, it's kind of a mess, but accountability on both sides. If you criticize men for finally becoming successful, there's been multiple women who have said that they didn't believe me. And it's the experience of most men out there that they get rejected in their teens in general. Maybe if you were particularly attractive, you could have experiences in your in your teens. Certainly, a lot of people do have casual relationships in their teens these days. But if you were looking for marriage, or even if you were looking for something a little bit more consistent, you aren't, you'd probably be laughed out of the building if you were an 18-year-old guy, said you wanted marriage. A lot of people would laugh at you or just be shocked, because that's not how society, or the culture we have today, where that's the expectation, or that's normal. It certainly wouldn't be normal to a lot of people if you did. And I was almost that kind of guy where I was looking for something more consistent, more of an actual relationship, something where love was involved. And it was very difficult, and I thought I was told it would be normal, so I always tried to date my age. And as I tried to date my age, it was a very unattractive thing to most women. Most women did not want to date my age. The only women who would really date me were always about 1 or 2 years younger, and I kind of liked that, but it wasn't even what the women wanted. The women wanted an even more mature guy, somebody who was already financially established, already had all the money, that they didn't have to take any risk on. Was I going to become successful? Was I going to have enough money? Did I have the social status that they wanted? It's a lot easier for a woman to pick from a guy who already has all the qualifications or all the things that she already wants, instead of taking a risk. It's like a man choosing a woman who might become what he wants. I'm not even talking about age, because that would be highly controversial. But it would be like a man somehow choosing a woman based on potential. And certainly a lot of women, especially in the past, did date on potential, at least in the short term. But they usually wouldn't marry somebody based on potential. And if they did, it would often lead to divorce, because he either wouldn't become as successful enough, or if he did become highly successful, what the woman wanted was the success and the money. She didn't want the guy. And sometimes the guy, I mean, hey, guys aren't perfect. Again, sometimes the guy would leave, because as the guy becomes that much more successful, he has so much more opportunity. And again, relationships are almost like an exchange. It's a trade of value. It's, some people describe it as a war. And if a guy becomes that much more successful, he can become choose that much more often of that much potentially better of a woman. And I wish it wasn't that way, but it is that way. And again, women, men do have their part, but women really have had more control, more influence, and made things the way they are today. And it's quite a fascinating thing, isn't it? Anyways, in relation to men and women, um, again, we do need to have some of that accountability. I just want people to recognize some of these things. You know, I'm not trying to use this to shame or to control. I'm not trying to do anything like that. And it's probably going to get me somewhat outcasted. It's probably not a very popular thing to say some of the things that I've said here today. Um, you know, if you are successful these days, because they don't separate, you know, who you are from your business or anything like that. Relationships often as a man are highly risky to your business or to anything that you do. And I wanted to mention this up as well. Women don't really risk that much. If they were to somehow tarnish their family relationships, like let's say the family was highly conservative and she was dating around and you know, no longer was a virgin or something, that's kind of a rare case. That's not happening as much out there anymore or any longer. And the thing is, there's a whole culture, plenty of groups to support them, lots of people who would still care about them. They don't necessarily have to have their family, even though family is still important to a lot of people and still important to a lot of women. Don't get me wrong there at all. But again, the thing is, if you are a man and you were to offend or do something wrong, potentially in the sight of the woman or society, who's going to be lose potentially their business, their livelihood, and everything else potentially out there in the world. It's not going to be the woman. It's the man who risks everything. So that is why you see so many men stepping away from this. And why did I bring that up? It's because you looked at all this. I said that women are starting to want more of harems, and you're saying, "Oh, Ben, you must want that. You must be excited about that." And and I say that women, you know, want older guys, and you might say, "Oh, Ben, you're looking forward to doing all that." And you're thinking of all these benefits that men are getting. You're thinking of, oh, all this control and all these things that men have. Really, there's not much benefit to it because of all the risk. You can lose everything that you have built up your entire life and have nothing to fall back on, socially, culturally, or financially, and just by a woman saying just an accusation. It does not even have to go through a legal system. It doesn't even have to go through a court. You can lose everything as a guy from interactions at all. And that is why we have so many of these men who are stepping away from society. And I think the you know, it's a problem, yes, that men are walking away, but what option do men really have? And I want this channel to be about how men can potentially take some of that personal power back and hopefully change society. But even if somebody like me or you, or even if you do agree with what I'm saying, if you do even want to help improve society or help people out, you are not going to be able to do that. And you're about to think I'm going to say without women. Well, women certainly could help, and but women did get all of this modern fem stuff pushed through with the help of men. There's no doubt about that. but you're not going to be able to do it if you potentially just lose everything for just a simple accusation. It's not worth risking uh, your life and your happiness and everything that you could potentially have and want, uh, for a social fight. And so to reject or fight what's going on in modern society, one of the only real options that men have or have been are starting to adopt is to start avoiding dating. You might say there's most men are still dating. Most men are still, be arguably being tools or doing whatever the women want. That's true. Most men are not aware of the change in women. They're not aware of what they actually want, and arguably how selfish. I mean, men are selfish too, but selfish again. Again, a lot of men are told that women cannot be selfish or are not selfish. Um, there's selfishness going all around, and you know, talking about laws, I can't change the law. I'm just one person. It's gonna that comes from people who are in the legal system and a bit large amounts of social change. One person, I can only be one voice, and to make things fair. Um, Even people who support the modern women's movement are starting to argue that divorce courts are unfair. If we got divorce courts to be actually equal, where people decided things outside of the government's control, or simply if there was an actual 50-50 exchange based on what money the people brought into the relationship. Again, it's factored only on what the men bring. So if the woman's a stay-at-home mom, a lot of people think it would be unfair that the woman, her work wouldn't be seen as value, but her work is to the kids. It's not financial. So I do think that a lot of the times maybe women should get the custody if there is a divorce, but should men be losing all this money and then have to pay alimony if they've been married for 10 years, and also do all these other things, and lose the car. Again, it's not 50-50. A man loses 50% of his money and often loses more than 50% of the house. Often the whole entire house goes to the woman, which is something that not everybody seems to acknowledge or talk about. Women often get the entire house. They also usually get most of the things in the house, and even men who have gone through the divorce system don't want to acknowledge this for some reason. I worked one time where I knew a guy. I worked with him, and he had been recently divorced. He still wanted to get back and with this woman who had divorced him, who had had an affair with a cop, and he still wanted to, after a couple years, still wanted to get possessions and things that he had lost, or had been taken from him, that were very personal to him, very personal items that he had lost, and he was still trying to talk to her to get those items. Does that sound very fair to you? That he had lost everything that was personal to him in the divorce. Is that fair? I don't think if you're a decent person that you would say so. I don't think that if you're a decent person that you would say that a man should lose everything that's personal to him. Can you split children? No. Oh, but there's more value than just financial, and that's not what courts can take into account. And again, most of the things are given towards the women. So no, again, I might be sounding like I'm particularly negative over here, but this is something that I've wanted to discuss, and I think that you need to hear about. This is a very tough topic. Both women and men need to sit down and decide what is fair, not only in divorce court, but in society in general. What's fair? And things have arguably become very unfair for men. And that is why you're starting to see creep up men who are starting to leave society or not want to be a part of society or are going to start doing less for society. I don't want much of anything to do with society. Society has done nothing but try to steal and control and connive and demand and has betrayed me in every way possible. Why should men care about their governments? Why should men care about the women in their countries? Why would you defend a woman in 2020 when you're going to be made out to the aggressor? You can't defend your home if if your wife decides to have an affair in your home. You can't have a physical altercation or fight or threaten a man who's in your home. There's laws against that. Why, I mean, are you even are you even married? Are you even a husband in modern marriages? So I was trying to talk about what women gain and also what men have to lose in relationships and marriage. And unless women are willing to be fair, to come to the table and make things a little bit more fair, maybe a lot more fair, I think that nothing is going to be changed. And again, I talked about simps and this kind of thing before. I don't know when or if any of this is going to change, because by and large, most men seem fairly comfortable to live under these laws and regulations and oppression, and they're willing to give money and throw money at women at every opportunity on the internet and everything from OnlyFans to Twitch and everything else and out there. Men are willing to give money to help women in many types of ways, and they still think it's their duty or responsibility and feel like it is their responsibility to do so. And make things, they still think that women aren't equal and all these things. When will women become equal? What will it take for women to become equal? And nothing is defined. And when things are defined, the goalpost is moved. Just like YouTube. Well, I'll make a video about YouTube. Anyways, what do women want? And then they meet the expectation. We don't want that anymore, or we want it in a different way. So nothing is established. So nobody or women particularly can't be held accountable. So I do want fairness, and this isn't all against women. Men certainly could be held a little bit more accountable, I suppose, in I guess child rearing. We've had lots of debates. There's been lots of debates out there about deadbeat dads, and certainly some of that is contrived. If you kick a man out of the home, and especially if you have a restriction order, or where he can't even be around you or the kids, how is he a deadbeat dad? This was a term that eventually became a nothing term because it was abused and it lost all meaning. But is there some truth to that? Well, there was, and certainly there was some blame to go around. But again, in the past, with traditional societies and traditional marriages, yeah, some successful men would betray a loving wife, but was it? I mean, people make it out to be like it was extremely common. Well, it depends, and also depends on your culture. Like France is very open to the idea of mistresses, and women fight for that. It's actually illegal, and the women made it illegal for you to do a paternity test, um, because women want to protect themselves, because everybody is has a mistress or something, or women, single or married, really kind of do whatever they want in France, at least as far as I know and I can see and I can tell. Correct me if I'm wrong down below. So, consequences. Consequences are interesting. And again, governments are being wielded in general more against men. I mean, I don't think. I'm not trying to make this a pity party, but how can you debate this? How can you oppose this? Give me examples of where governments are punish men more than they do women. Give me examples of where cultures, in a divorce, give more of the money of the divorce from the separation to the man than they do the woman. And yes, there are rare cases where the woman is more wealthy, but those are very rare, and they often are not won. Um, Give me examples where, you know, there's a man um, who was drunk and taken advantage of by a woman, and people actually acknowledged it. There's these kind of things do go on, but they're generally ignored. There's lots of issue again. Sounding like some people out there are gonna make it sound like I'm singing a pity party, but there are lots of issues on the men's side, and they're ignored. And if they are acknowledged, women try to say that they fight for them, in within their movement, as if what they are doing is the movement, and it's really disingenuous because essentially they're saying your issues don't matter, but ours do. That's really what they're saying, because the modern movement of today does not support men. Fair divorces, actual law. There was the movement of believe all women, no matter what they said, didn't have to go through our legal processes, and you're supposed to believe what a woman says, even if she has no witnesses, no evidence, and there's no proof, no matter what the issue, or no matter what they said, or who it was against. And before y'all get angry at me, there have been multiple cases of men being accused of things like that, the worst of offenses, almost, some of the worst things imaginable, and the women lied about it, and they did lie. And you're not supposed to talk about these kinds of things because you are hurting the narrative or hurting women. But we need, if you want to change things and make things more fair or more honest or more real, you can't do it off of lies. And there have been women of this variety who have openly said that, it doesn't matter if there's a few casualties or a few men who lose everything, because, we're going to make the change that we want, or we're supposed to have, or that we should have. So that's the kind of society that we live in today. And I was at college. I went to, well, a lot of people would say is a very conservative college. Some people would argue one of the most conservative colleges out there. And it was not conservative to me. It was not at all. It was very leftist. Most of the people I was around, even though if they believed in traditional marriage, they still believed that men generally throughout history had done women wrong. They still believed that women were treated poorly throughout history, that men generally had the original sin, that they were, had ruined society, had messed everything up, that men had to be watched, that men had to be surveyed, that men needed to be held accountable, and that men needed to give more or do more for women. And this was at a highly religious, I guess you could say private college. And again, I'm no longer religious, but these women were fully converted to the modern movement of today, most of them, or took bits and pieces and all the other, stuff that we were taught through the college textbooks and the college professors, even if there were some of them who were more, had different political opinions. In general, they, were kind of collectivists, and and really didn't focus on the individual, didn't focus on rights, didn't focus on justice, and it was very hard to, get actual any real answers. Sometimes emotion was supported as more factual than anything. I'll tell y'all another quick story before I start to slowly wrap up this presentation today. A very long video, I know, but I'll never forget when at this college where we were it was very difficult to get any type of discussion, real discussion, and if you had mentioned anything or anything historical, this professor would not talk about anything that was actually historical. It was a basic American history, like 101 class, introductory. But this professor thought it was very fun one time to bring up social issues in regards to kind of like welfare checks and not redistribution of wealth or anything like as far as that, but like welfare checks. And they thought one lady was very emotional about welfare checks, and I think her mother was a single mother. I don't know from a divorce or not, but just made an emotional case, didn't present any facts, acted like it was a necessity, acted like her mother and she were the victim as they got welfare. How can you get welfare and still act like the victim? If you get welfare, you might be a victim of somebody, but you're not a victim of society or the government, the society that pays the government or is the government that paid for your welfare. You can't be a victim of society at large, and it was very strange, and they highlighted on that emotion, and they tried to make the whole class debate her and make that whole debate about her and welfare for women when they already get lots of welfare. Single mothers are universally celebrated and supported. She was very angry that, again, this to a lot of people this would be considered a very conservative private religious school. Most of the people supported it being welfare in general. But as we did these like little votes where people just raised their hand, but only about half of the people in the class supported more welfare, extra welfare. So most of the people in the class still would think that women were taken care of, that we should still continue the programs and still do what we're doing, but only about half of them decided that we should do more. And this woman was very angry. If this was to come to a vote, politicians give out our money, and they do what makes people happy to get reelected, and especially if that politician lived in an area where they had 50% of support for something that the modern media and everybody else really supports, they would do it. So if this came to a vote, with how social dynamics really and how our legal system works, she would probably get, the vote would go through based off, the votes in this class. Even with 50%, she would probably get that extra money towards welfare like she wanted. But you cannot have much of anybody disagreeing with more welfare. And see, that's the thing. We've talked about government a bunch, and I'm going to get on a different topic here just in a second. But people, when they depend on something and they want something, and something is done through a government, people want more and more of it. That not only do they depend on it, they want the status quo, but they want more. And I'm not trying to get into the debate of welfare in general, if it should be around or not, or if welfare does enough for women. That's another discussion for another day. But the discussion is really here is government is going to mandate these any type of program and make it bigger and bigger. These are power hungry, as I wrote right here. Power hungry politicians who make more money, who want to get people emotional like that, who want to offer you more of somebody's money, more of something from somebody else, and give it to you. And a lot of the times, in regards to taxes, it's still taken out of your pocket, but because you feel like it's a benefit or an asset to you, you're willing to sacrifice those taxes because you think you're getting those benefits. It's like you getting paid less for your work, almost the same, but in a different way. But then where you work, they start giving you extra programs, like they wash your car, they clean your car, they start giving you lunch every day. Maybe they have programs to take care of your kids while you work late, if you work late or work extra hours. They have paid leave, and they have these extra programs, but it's taken out of your pay. It's kind of the same principle that nothing's for free, and the government can't. It tries to make money up, but when it prints more money, because we're off of a gold standard, it decreases the value of money. So even if that money isn't taken out of somebody's pocket, it is in a way of it is taken out of the value of everybody who has any type of money. Your money is worth less and less. And that also it goes. I wanted to mention that because that is what is happening right now. A lot of what is happening right now. Money has dropped at least in 20% value just in the last couple of months. Who knows how fast it's going to go down? And I'm not saying anything crazy like it's going to crash, but the value of our value of dollars in a lot of countries, as they continue to print and continue to go into debt, is a problem. But how are you going to fix something like that? Again, I want to wrap this up. There are problems with governments. There are problems with societies, but what really matters is you. And I think that's is a message of hope and something that can be inspirational. Every day, you can go throughout your life as a guy, determine what kind of life you want. You do not have to debate all these people out there. You do not have to debate the crazy people on TikTok, even though we will share some of their videos, a few of them. We aren't going to hyper focus on them. My channel is going to be much different than that. But you do not have to debate with every person who disagrees with you. Every time somebody asks you a question, you don't lie to people, but you don't have to, play into people's games and get into the debates about things that you might not care about, or that might not be that impactful or that important to you. You might not care, or you might not think that particular discussion with that individual is important enough. Especially these days, again, man, you got to be very careful. These times, anybody saying anything about you, around society or around you, who you're around, they can easily get you fired, and they can easily outcast you. They can easily get you to lose everything that you've built in your life. So you either need to get to the point or go to the point where you have a job outside of a business, where you're an independent contractor, create your own business where you have all the control, very few employees, or create a way where you hire people like on a contractual basis to do individual jobs where they're not actually employed on a consistent basis in your company. Or which is very good advice, and we're going to have a video about that. Or you're going to have to as an individual, um, figure out how to pick your battles, because a lot of people are not willing to leave their families, especially with their sisters and their aunts and or their wife if you're still potentially married watching this. You're not willing to leave all of that, and but you're not really willing to risk it, say anything that could potentially be potentially offensive, because again, men do not see the government, or you want to use the government in general. Most men do not see them benefiting from the government or trying to use the government to give them money or give them the results that they want. Men would rather go out there and create their own success and make their future. Women would rather use society to use government a lot of the times. Again, there's very hardworking women out there, highly successful women, and I'm not trying to take away from them, but a lot of women, they use this tool that they have or can have. And men, I'm not saying men should switch things around and take money from women. Absolutely not. I'm saying that government possibly shouldn't have been doing this in the first place, and that getting government down in size is the bigger issue here. Governments should not be involved in marriage certificates, where to be legally or formally recognized as a marriage, or if you do get married outside of the government still attempts to have some control over your marriage. Like, what if you wanted to get married outside of the government, like just a personal marriage? You could do that, but in some places, even you living with somebody is considered common law marriage, and legally, after a certain period of time, in the eyes of the law or the government, you're essentially married, and are you're responsible, or these things will be applied to you, especially as a man, as if you were married to a woman when you never signed the contract to begin with, and you never agreed to anything with the government to begin with. That's how much power the government has, and how much involvement the government has. And you know what I'm saying? So, final thoughts. This was a very long-winded video. This was like a giant podcast. This is a video that will give you some food for thought, a lot to think about, very heart-filled. Again, I want to make my things as clear as possible and straight to the point in an open format. And I am going to make some shorter videos that are very straight to the point, but I hope that you understand that, that there are problems in society. I'll get very personal here with you guys at the end of this video. Ladies and gents, I hope you're watching this. I would have loved to have had a happy family, the white picket fence, the dog, and everything else. And for some people, that's despicable these days. I would have liked to have that. I would have enjoyed having that, but it's not really something that's really possible unless, with marriage especially, unless you're willing to empower the government and give it all this power and control and authority over your life. And that's, and that's one of the biggest issues. But socially as well, where am I as a guy allowed to, actually earn, keep what I earn, pay so much in taxes, and the taxes are not used equally among men and women. Women benefit more from taxes. So essentially more of my money goes towards women or other people than myself in the sense of gender. And you're not even supposed to bring this up. You're not even supposed to mention this. You're supposed to be happy to do this as a guy. Even as a guy, as I was raised, and I had every intention, and I tried to be the perfect gentleman, and I tried to do everything right. I was very careful, generous, kind, hardworking, I've helped lots of women move. I've done lots of service projects. I'm an Eagle Scout. I'm not perfect, but pretty. I don't want to be prideful, but really almost as good as they come. And I still was never really treated that with that much respect. I met plenty of shy women, but I wasn't particularly interested in them. And you know, how can you have any type of relationship without there being great danger, without there being great threats to your personal livelihood? You can't escape these dangers because it's more than just cultural. It's not like you can go form with a bunch of your friends or group your own culture. These are legal issues. And that's ultimately the issue. There's people out there who have laws, who have power over our financial system, who have power with guns, and they're willing to do the will of these politicians against men. And as we go forward and forward, we're going to have more and more restrictions and more taken from men. That's the where we're headed. And the only way we're going to stop this is if we bring up awareness, because men are continuing to accept more and more of burdens, and they don't even know what's happening. The more and more money, taxes are being allocated, towards these powerful organizations. And what do you get for it? Even women. Again, there's so much corruption or pork, or however you want to say it. Women don't even get really almost what they can or what they pay in taxes. They don't even get their money back. But this is more than just a corruption issue. So, again, this is the Daddy Knows Best channel. This is very long-winded. I hope that you enjoyed this video today. Let me know what you think.